A doctorate is not a financial plan. Robert Kiyosaki was raised on the advice of a man who had a doctorate and a state's entire education department under him. That man left bills to be paid. The other man he called his father never finished the 8th grade and became one of the richest men in Hawaii. Both worked hard all their lives, and both earned well. Two men gave him opposite advice about the same dollar, and he had to choose between them before he was 10. A paycheck is not a plan. That is the side he chose, and the argument the book makes. The advice handed down at kitchen tables is specific. Study hard, get good grades, find a safe job with benefits. It says nothing about how long it takes to stop needing the job. How long does it take to stop needing a paycheck? When the lessons start at 9. Robert's father earned well and reached the end of every month with nothing left over. Schooling had raised what he could earn, not what he could keep. The year he started asking, Robert was 9, in a sugar plantation town. A jog in the school district line had put him in the school the plantation managers and doctors sent their children to. Had his family lived on the other side of their own street, he would have gone to school with children like him. One weekend, a boy called Jimmy left for a beach house in the family Cadillac and took 3 friends. Robert was not one of them. He was told, the way children tell each other things, that he was not invited because he was a poor kid. That evening he asked his father how to get rich. His father put down the paper, thought a while, and said, "Well, use your head, son," which meant the smartest man Robert knew did not have the answer. And there was not much work available for 9-year-old boys. Mike, his best friend, had read something in a science book, so for weeks the two of them knocked on doors asking neighbors to save their used toothpaste tubes. It was a business secret, they told anyone who asked. The tubes filled a brown cardboard box beside the washing machine, until Robert's mother gave them a week to clear the mess. Toothpaste tubes in those days were made of lead. Robert's father drove up one afternoon and found the driveway blocked by a production line. The hibachi grill at full heat, a steel pot of molten metal, milk cartons packed with plaster of Paris. Robert lifted the top half of a mold away, and a lead nickel fell out. His father sat the boys on the front step and explained, gently, the word counterfeiting. The business closed on opening day, and Robert's father told him he had chosen to be a school teacher, that he did not know how to make money, and that he knew the man who did. That man is never named in the book. Journalists who went looking never found him, and Kiyosaki has since called him a composite. Hear what follows as a parable. What could a man who left school at 13 teach 2 boys that a superintendent of education could not? Mike's father made the offer with no room to think in it. Work for me, and I will teach you. Do not work for me, and I will not. School is beginning, or it's over in 10 seconds. Robert gave up his softball game, took it, and spent 3 hours every Saturday in a grocery store, lifting cans off a shelf, dusting each one and stacking it back. 10 cents an hour. 3 dimes in his hand at noon. By the 4th week he was ready to quit, and when he said so, Mike smiled and told him his father had been waiting for exactly that. Robert had not been hired. He had been arranged. Robert came back the next Saturday carrying his own father's instructions. Demand 25 cents an hour, and walk out if you do not get it. He was told to sit and wait in line. 45 minutes went by in a dark living room while a bright Hawaiian Saturday went on outside. The women beside him managed restaurants. The older man ran warehouses. All of them worked for someone with more than 150 employees, and not one had ever asked him what he knew about money. They asked him for jobs. Inside the office, Robert accused him of being a crook, of being greedy, of breaking his word. He was 9 and nearly in tears. The man rocked back and studied him. "Not bad," he said. "In less than a month you sound like most of my employees." Robert was certain he was talking to somebody who needed locking up. Then came the terms. He could have his raise to 25 cents an hour, or work the same 3 hours every Saturday for nothing. He took nothing, and the offers kept climbing. 3 unpaid Saturdays later, the man pulled up in his truck, took 2 ice creams out of his freezer, and walked the boys to a picnic table beside a field where adults were playing softball. "Learn this," he said, "or you end up like the people out there. Very hard work for very little. A secure job, 3 weeks off a year, and a thin pension at the end. If that sounds good, I will raise you to 25 cents an hour." Robert shook his head. His heart did not. $1 an hour, then 2, which in that decade would have made a 9-year-old the richest boy he knew. Then 5. At 5, something went quiet. The offer had become ridiculous, and the wanting stopped with it. The ice cream had melted down his hand, and the ants had found the stick. "Most people have a price," the man said, "and they have a price because of human emotions named fear and greed." On the walk back, Mike's father told them what he was buying with the nothing he paid them. "Forget about needing a paycheck," he said, "and the mind starts showing you ways of making money no wage could match. Opportunities sitting in front of people who never see them because they are looking for a wage and a bit of safety, and that is all they get." 2 Saturdays later, Robert saw one. Mrs. Martin, who ran the store, was cutting the covers off unsold comic books, keeping the top half to claim credit from the distributor, and throwing the rest into a large brown cardboard box. Robert asked the distributor whether he could have them. He could, on one condition: he worked for the store, and he did not resell them. So the 2 boys cleaned out a room in Mike's basement and filled it with hundreds of comics. Mike's younger sister ran the door, charged 10 cents to come in, and checked pockets on the way out. Robert and Mike averaged $9.50 a week, and the room earned it on afternoons when neither of them was near the place. Kiyosaki and his co-author Sharon Lechter reduced the whole mechanism to 2 sentences a child can hold. "An asset is something that puts money in my pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of my pocket. Everything else is an argument about which is which." Those 2 definitions explained something Robert had noticed at home. His father's income was entirely spoken for by the time it arrived, so a raise never changed the shape of anything. It only made it bigger. The comic library did not survive. 3 months in a fight broke out in the basement, and Mike's father shut it down. The room was gone, but the distinction it had drawn was not. The shop was the job Robert did on Saturdays, and the basement was the thing he owned every other day of the week. Kiyosaki's name for that distinction is blunt. Your profession is not your business. The job is what pays you. The business is what you own while you are doing it. One thing Robert bought in those after-hours years was a 3-day course advertised late at night on television. It cost $385, and he did not use a word of it for 3 years. 13 years later, everything his father had wanted for him arrived at once. Standard Oil hired the new graduate for its tanker fleet at $42,000 a year, earned in 7 months of sailing, more than his father had ever been paid. It was the plan. The whole plan, arriving exactly on time. Robert resigned after 6 months and joined the Marine Corps. The reason was not flying. Mike's father had told him the hardest part of running anything is managing people, and that a man who cannot lead gets shot in the back in business the same way he does anywhere else. So Robert went to Vietnam to learn it. His educated father was devastated. His other father congratulated him. None of it had ever been about money. "It's fear that keeps most people working at a job," the man had told him at 9. "The fear of not paying the bills, of being fired, of starting over. A wage is what that fear buys, and the price never comes down." Robert's father told him more than once that their home was his greatest investment. Robert drew him a diagram of where the money actually went, out through the same column every month, and the argument that followed was not pleasant. This is Kiyosaki's own cash flow test, not the accountant's. On a balance sheet, a house is an asset. By his test, it is a liability, because month after month it takes money out. His claim is not that nobody should buy one. It is that most people spend a working life paying for a home they never quite finish owning. Robert found selling the most frightening thing in the world. So he spent 4 years at Xerox knocking on doors until he could stand being turned down. He took the job for what it would teach him rather than what it paid, which is the whole of work to learn, not to earn. The strongest objection to all of this is one Kiyosaki puts in the book himself. A neighbor had spent 25 years at the same computer company and would walk out with $4 million in a retirement plan, throwing off more than the salary he had been living on. So it can be done, even if you hate losing or hate risk, but you must start early. The arithmetic of the safe road works. What defeats it is never the arithmetic. Robert's father fell out with the governor of Hawaii and was told he could no longer work in state government. A man with a doctorate and a life in public education, locked out of the only system he had ever worked inside. Robert's father took over the teachers' union and told his son it was the hardest job he ever held. When he died, he left bills to be paid. Both men were teachers, both generous, both believers in education. They disagreed only about what there was to learn. One taught Robert to write a resume that would find him a good job. The other taught him to write business plans so he could create them. One said, "I can't afford it." The other forbade the words and made the boys ask instead, "How can I afford it?" A statement and a question. One of them lets you off. The other does not. Mike's father taught him for 30 years and stopped when Robert was 39, because there was nothing left to say. What Robert took out of those unpaid Saturdays was not a formula. It was a habit of looking hard at whatever everybody else had already written off. "There is gold everywhere," a miner told him in Peru years later. "Most people are not trained to see it." The second habit was smaller and harder to hold. Pay yourself first. Money into the asset column ahead of the discretionary spending, and let the pressure do the work comfort never does. Not ahead of the tax bill, and not ahead of debt that compounds against you. He is describing what you automate, not what you skip. His bookkeeper hated it anyway. His father had done the exact reverse his whole life, and the reverse is what left nothing over. The course taught one thing: how to buy houses in foreclosure. For 3 years, while he sold copiers by day, he spent his evenings doing exactly what it said, step by step, until he could do it without thinking. Then a condominium a few streets from his house went into foreclosure. The bank wanted $60,000. Robert offered $50,000 and attached a cashier's check for the whole of it, and they understood he was serious. He rented it to winter visitors, and by his own account the money came back inside 3 years. One deal reported by the man who made it, not a method with a result attached. The plan worked. The date did not. Kiyosaki's own record is in the book. Out of every 10 investments, a couple are home runs, most do nothing, and on the rest, he loses money. "I have lost money and been set back many times." He had wanted to be out by 40. 40 came and went, and the freedom he had worked towards since he was 9 arrived 7 years late. What kept Robert getting back up were not the things he wanted. They were the things he did not want. He hated that his father had missed his football games for his career. He hated more that his father worked hard all his life and could not pass on what was left of it. Robert stopped in 1994. 38 years had gone by since the Saturday he was handed 3 dimes for 3 hours of dusting cans. And what had changed was not the size of a number. It was that nothing arriving in his life any longer depended on him turning up for it. There were 2 brown cardboard boxes in Robert's first year of this, and everything is in the difference between them. The first sat beside a washing machine and filled with other people's used toothpaste tubes. Every tube had to be burned clean and melted down, and what came out was not money and never could be, and the whole thing was swept off a driveway in an afternoon. The second sat behind the counter of a grocery store, and filled with what somebody had already written off. Nobody had to be talked into giving it away. It went into a basement room, and it paid, every afternoon, whether either boy was in the room or not. A paycheck is not a plan. It is a month, bought 1 month at a time, for as long as the months keep coming.